My name is Brenda Romero, and I'm the game director for Empire of Sin.
I'm Ian O'Neill, and I'm the combat designer for Empire Sin.
I'm Chris King, and I am a general designer on Empire Sin, doing the things no one else wants to design.
And I'm Katie Gardner, and I'm lead narrative designer for Empire of Sin.
So by the time we post this interview, we're all going to have heard about Empire of Sin Make It Count. It's the game's first expansion, and you've been issuing a lot of major free updates to Empire of Sin to this point, and there's even a big one lined up later in the year with the Precinct update. So I'd like to ask, what's going into the paid expansion that will set it apart from the free updates?
Well, I think it is major new content that gives players all kinds of things. I mean, first of all, you know what? If I can I'm gonna pick. Who do I want to pick first? All right. So there's a new boss. So the new boss, I'll let Katie talk about him. But the reason I specifically love this new boss is because he was co-founder of Murder Inc., which has to be the coolest real historical gang name in existence. And so we picked, and I'll turn it over to Katie, and maybe you can talk about our new boss.
Yeah, so Meyer Lansky is the new boss that we're going to be adding for the Make It Count DLC, and one of the focuses for the Make It Count DLC is this whole kind of concept of a fixer, because fixers are being introduced as the new type of gangster profession for Make It Count. So, you know, when you think of a fixer and what are the qualities of a fixer, what does that mean? What do we want people to think of when we think of that character? And Meyer Lansky's basically the perfect sort of candidate for that type of profession. And Meyer Lansky, you know, he was somebody who, in a time where mob bosses and gangsters were just constantly killing at each other and kind of at each other all the time, he was someone who was able to bring people together who previously hadn't worked together. He was co-founder of the National Crime Syndicate in Atlantic City, which was pretty much the first time that all these mob bosses got together across the country and decided, hey, actually we're more powerful if we work together rather than against one another. So that's sort of an interesting quality about him, where he just has this ability to kind of get people on his side. And I mean, it's not to say that he's not a violent dude, because like he's got the Murder Inc. You know, if you do cross him, you're getting Murder Inc. But if you don't, he's cool with you, and like, you know, everything's gonna be fine. So Meyer Lansky is basically the epitome of this sort of fixer character, and then obviously we've also got 5 gangsters that you can hire that are fixers, and that's a new profession that we're adding for Make It Count.
Yeah, I think with Lansky, like he is as good with a gun, obviously, as he is with numbers. If sometimes with, you know, especially with people who may not be familiar with like the historical people who lived during that time, I guess I correlate Meyer Lansky to say Mike from Breaking Bad, who's just a super badass, right? So he's bringing a whole new level of well, I guess both to the diplomatic play and to the empire play of the game. And then it also, so this fixer character, in addition to, so the gangsters, is going to be 5 new gangsters in this update. So fixers they'll be able to mediate conflict between gangsters. So if you have 2 people you really want to work together on a team and they hate each other, fixer can smooth things over. They also unlock Loan Sharking, which is the brand new racket that players have asked for a whole bunch of rackets, but the one we hear again and again and again is, please can we have Loan Sharking? And Chris, maybe you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, sure. So we've added a new money-making way for your glorious criminal empire, which is the humble Loan Shark. It differs from the standard rackets in that the standard rackets, you open it up, people come in, you make your money. Now, Loan Sharks is obviously about helping people who are a bit temporarily short of cash by, you know, topping them up with generous rates of interest. So when you set up a loan shark, you put some capital into it, which essentially is some money you're going to loan out. The more capital you put in, the more money you can lend to desperate people. We'll call them desperate. And the more money the loan shark makes. So it's a very kind of different. It's more cash intensive, more capital intensive. But the more you put in, the more you'll get out. And the other thing with loan sharks is that obviously some people, they don't quite, not very good with finances in the first place. So that's why they've gone to loan sharks. Underestimate how much money they're going to have to pay you back, and then it's up to you to decide how you're going to deal with this. And because you're the boss, we want to keep the idea of you being the boss. We don't expect you to go personally around and knock on the door of everybody who has decided not to pay you. But instead, you make the big decision. So when somebody doesn't pay, the loan shark people go, boss, this guy isn't paying, what do you want us to do? And then you get to choose, do you break their legs? Well, maybe not literally, but do you go heavy in on the money? Are you going to be a generous soul and give them a bit more time? Now, if you give them a bit more time, they might end up paying you more in the end, or they might skip town, and other people might think, well, if they can just get away with not paying you, we can do the same. So, there's a whole kind of risk-reward thing around how the loan shark works, and you decide, what kind of loan sharker are you? Are you a good loan sharker or a quite tough one? That's all up to you.
And just to add to that too, and I feel like this is deja vu because I feel like I did this before too, but just to add that blackmail is part of loan sharking as well, where when you take over certain rackets, certain other people's loan shark rackets, you can sometimes find it in your own racket, but more often if you take over another person's, there's a chance that you will find blackmail on potentially a high-profile character in Empire Sin or in Chicago. Which you can use to extract a favor or to use to other ends as you see fit. So that's another part of loan sharking.
This is all really fascinating, and wow, you've actually addressed a lot of my questions so far, but I guess I want to kind of go back to the Fixer a little bit. And you talk about them as mediators of conflict. Like, are there any conflicts that they can't resolve? And what happens in that case?
So if they can't mediate things, this is where they come into where they come into conflict themselves. And they have, with every class that we have, they have new combat skills. And so the fixer, I don't want to say fills a void, but comes with something players have asked for, and it really goes very well with the depot. So we have in Precincts, which is part of the free update. In Precincts, your precincts are controlled by a building known as the depot, and depots have larger combat spaces, we'll say, and the Fixer excels in these. Ian, do you mind talking about the Fixer?
I don't mind at all, Brenda. Excellent segue there. So with the part of the paid content, I was going to say it earlier, but I didn't want to. As with the part of the paid content, so in Empire Sin we have our professions, which are our classes. So in other games where you might have a rogue, a mage, or a paladin, in Empire Sin you have a con artist, a hired gun, and an enforcer. So Fixer is the next profession in that lineup. So with professions, with the Fixer slots into a long-range support role. So they will primarily focus on rifles and sniper rifles for their offensive capabilities, and their talent tree is built around that. So there's a lot of interactions with Overwatch, a lot of passives that are built around the way that Overwatch works, and there's a lot of active abilities built around the ideas of, sniper rifles require you to 2 AP to fire, so let's give them a snapshot ability that lets them fire off a sniper rifle round with 1 AP, won't enter turn, but it suffers from a marksmanship penalty. So they are going to excel with rifles and sniper rifles. There's also quite a bit of area of denial built into their kit as well. So there's a couple of skills like Crow's Feet that will, you can throw out and essentially, for the first time, interrupt people's movements. So if a character runs through your Crow's Feet, they will be interrupted and stop dead in their tracks, which is fantastic. So you can build them out in 2 really primary ways, which is area of denial and long range support. So Brenda touched on depots. So as part of the free content with precincts, there is a key structure in each precinct called a depot, and I'm actually building out these levels right now, and these are the largest interior spaces that we have in Empire Sin so far. They're kind of pushing it out there a little bit. One of the things that's come back from fans is that they want to see a little more variety in interiors and just a larger interior, a larger play space. So what we're working towards a sort of blended interior where there's lots of corridors and rooms, but there's also a much larger open warehouse kind of space in the central part of this, and you'll have to battle your way through a couple of groups of enemies to actually take over the depot, and if you take over the depot, you will take over the precinct. And as part of the, from combat and as part of the paid content as well, there's also a new weapon pack, there's a new trinket pack, there's new utility items coming as well, and there's something else that I've forgotten item-wise, but there's a whole bunch of new items coming essentially.
I'm glad you mentioned the Precinct update, and that's one of my bigger questions is, in what ways is the free Precinct update going to complement what's coming in the Make Account expansion?
A lot of the stuff that is in the Precinct update, which is really fleshing out sort of the Empire side of the game as well as the diplomatic side of the game, that's the kind of stuff that Fixers and Meyer Lansky, they excel at that. And so I think players will see that those two work really well together.
And there are some new win conditions on the way too. Can you explain some of the new win conditions that are coming either through the expansion or through the new Precinct update?
Well, they're both free actually, and so there's a win condition and then there's another path to victory. So the win condition is the Chi-Town Mogul. So for players who just like amassing a big empire, maybe they're just building up their defenses as much as they can, holding things off, making as much money as they can. They have the Chi-Town Mogul, so they can basically, hit a certain amount of cash and then head for that win condition. Meyer Lansky actually excels at that win condition. He has a slightly better chance. He has a slightly smaller cap than the other bosses do, just because of his other networking and in his other abilities. And then we have something known as the buyout. So this is a diplomatic path to victory. So the buyout is really convincing someone that they want to take your cash and get out of town instead of leaving in a box. And so it requires you to have a certain level of relationship with this person to begin with. But it allows players who want to focus more on the economic side of things or the diplomatic side of things in another path to victory, basically.
Is this one of those things that loan sharking can help lead to, like you raise enough money through loan sharking that you can actually buy somebody out?
Well, I mean, certainly with the buyout, there is obviously an economic. You need the cash to buy them out as well as a diplomatic relationship for them to consider. So yeah, certainly. Any sort of expansion of your economic side will allow the buyout. So certainly loan sharking can bring in some nice cash and is one way to help raise that money to buy people out, if that is how you want to consolidate your empire by getting everyone else to leave Chicago.
I'm really fascinated by the decisions you make to add these real life figures, these real life historical figures in the world of organized crime. So, what are your primary sources in researching these real life people, these real world people, and how do you go about implementing them into the game?
Well, if we go back even to the beginning, I'll take words out of Ian's mouth actually here. Ian was saying that before we were talking about it, and somebody was saying, "Gosh, it must be." It must be challenging basically to come up with all of these things, and it is. We have barely scratched the surface. There are so many things. We were in a previous discussion, and somebody asked a specific question about this type of gangster. So Ian, the primary source is for overly curious game designers, really. So here we go on an internet rabbit hole. Ian comes up with somebody who, and I'm like, this guy has to be in the next, not in these two, this DLC here, but in the one that's coming up. Just blown away. And now I've probably, in fairness, gone on the same, we've got to have this guy campaign at least 10 times.
There's the period of time between, I'll do you slightly longer than we actually have in the game. So between, say, 1918 and 1932, 3, 4 was such a turbulent time for America and for the world. If we're focusing a lens on Chicago, which is quite a large section, it's a large section to us, it's a small section to the world. Just in that small section, so much happened and so much went on, and often more than not, the truth is far stranger than the fiction. So there are so many characters, there are so many stories, there are so many events, there's so much history, and like as Brenda said, we've only scratched the surface. It is, it is a mile deep. It is 10 miles deep. We could keep going. There are enough characters. There are some crazy characters. There was a gangster who was a cowboy, who saw himself as a cowboy and dressed as a cowboy, and like this is during the 1920s, and you're kind of going, what? Yeah, he carried around two 6-shooters, two big heavy 6-shooters. I've forgotten his name, but he was known as like the cowboy, and that's just one character in a gallery of characters. The truth is far stranger than any fiction we could ever create.
And when we're like kind of creating missions, or when we start to think about like, okay, well, we want to have some historical fidelity, and we want to try to see, well, what kind of things could happen in this time. Like oftentimes we will just there was a time when we were looking at newspapers and just kind of like looking for stories to pull from that, and they're insane things that were happening and were being reported on during the time, and it's like, we don't need imaginations. We could just pull from this. Like, it's incredible. There's just, as Ian said, like there's just so much there during that time period, especially, that to draw on and to use in the game. And we do have some things that are based in history in the game, like missions that are based in history, but yeah, all of it, like we could do all of it based in history, and it would still be, there'd still be some insane things in there. But yeah, there's a lot there.
Just because I'm curious, because I want to ask real fast, Brenda, did you make your studio watch Johnny Dangerously or Oscar while they were working on the game, or before they worked on the game?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to make people do anything, but the reference that I'm sure that everybody here at least is probably sick to death of me talking about. I mean, obviously there's the Untouchables, right? There's the classic canon of mob films, but there's also the entire personality and the dynamics that happen in The Sopranos. I think are just, to me, even I know it's not the same time period, but those relationships that form and the interconnectedness of that, I think that was always a part of it. One thing I do want to say on with the gangsters and as well as the bosses that we have, there was one of the designers, Darius Monks. His job was to just dig, and that's, he came up with some of the bosses that people may not have heard about very often, especially in Chicago. There was Al Capone, and Al Capone takes up 95% of the air in the room. And so now all the other bosses are there, but most people just know about Al Capone. So Darius did a fantastic job, and I would, please find me somebody that sort of fits this, but we want a historical boss. And Darius, that's all he did, and he would research and he would bring back just great stuff. And so we also were really fortunate to have a super engaged community who who has shined a light on, how come we can't have this guy? We really want this guy. And I'm using the term guy. What I really mean is person. And so, there's loads of different people that have been suggested in the game for the game. We are all over the place. We have, we're in Discord, we're on Paradox forums, we're on Twitter, Facebook, you name it. We're all over the place. And we see every single suggestion and have actually weekly meetings about all the suggestions that players make. So if players are curious and want to know if somebody's coming, feel free to ask, because we actually do read all of this, and we look at everything.
You mentioned The Untouchables and The Sopranos. Were there any other like true crime books or true crime podcasts that have had an influence on the game design?
Not well, for me, no, not specifically podcasts. I have a lifelong fascination with criminal empires. Really, like, just going back to the time that I was a kid and my mother would not explain Prohibition to me. And not that I am that old. There was a bar that never closed during Prohibition in the town where I grew up, and I had questions about it, and she wouldn't answer why the cops wouldn't shut it, thus causing me to go on library searches. And there's bookshelves over to this side, and 2 full shelves all have to do with criminal empires. So if it's a criminal empire, regardless of where it's located in time, I'm fascinated with it.
I think one of the most important, back in the early days when we were kind of getting research together and building the pieces of the game, one of the most important finds that Brenda found was the Elliot Ness book There's a book Elliot Ness
Oh,
wrote
yeah.
himself, and
Yeah, right,
it
of
goes
course.
into quite a lot of detail about how Capone's operations worked, how gangster operations in Chicago worked, the amount of income that they had and that they generated, which was actually kind of surprising, very surprising for that time period. They generated so much money; it was just ridiculous. But it was written by Elliot Ness himself, or it was written by his brother, I think, was it? I've forgotten who, but it's a real life account by Elliot Ness, essentially. So that was a very key find.
Yeah. I remember coming in with that, in fact, and I don't think the book would be a great book if you weren't a game designer working on a game about this. But I do remember. I'm so glad Ian said that because I remember coming in with this book in hand, going, Ian, it's all in here. Everything is in here, and it really was. Down, like it
It's
was.
quite an old book as well. It's quite
Yeah,
worn. It's The Untouchables, Elliot Ness with Oscar Farley. Um, yeah,
yeah,
it's
that book
actually
was
what the TV
critical.
show is based off of.
Now, one of my favorite news pieces from like the last week, and Empire of Sin has had a big week this week, but one of my favorite things that I've heard this week is that the PC version is getting mods. So I know it's really early to talk about that, but I do want to ask, is there anything that you'd particularly be interested in seeing from the modding community?
Well, Shacknews has some good history with modding communities. Yeah, I honestly, I'm curious to see. There was yesterday somebody modded Doom into Crusader Kings 3, which doesn't run Doom, and now we can. I don't know how the Crusader Kings are going to deal with the BFG. In fairness, I expect, given that it's coming from Romero Games, that possibly that will be an early an early modding win condition, but we're releasing modding in phases. So the first phase, we're not saying yet what is in the specific phases, but we're releasing modding in phases. I can't wait to see what other bosses players bring, what missions people bring. Like as we continue to roll out modding, what other stuff players bring to the game. I mean, I think that's always anybody who works on a moddable game. It's always amazing to see what people come up with and what they manage to add and where they expand the game in ways that you may not have thought of.
And I guess lastly for me, the Make Account expansion and the Precinct update are both kind of a ways down the line. Can players expect to see any other kinds of updates, big or small, between now and then?
We just came out with the Gangster update, which is massive. I mean, there were 570, I think. There were so many improvements. I'm going to find 570. That sounded like too high a number, but nope, I'm right. It was 570 individual things. So we are moving with the Gangster update, which has so much stuff in it. We're really moving on to developing new content and new features, significant new features and updates for the game.
All right. Well, thank you so much. This is really fascinating. Wow, what a cool talk this was. Like I fell down the Meyer Lansky rabbit hole earlier today, and I'm just like, wow, this is really odd. Like, and just researching all this stuff has to be like just an amazing time. Just like something else. You learn something new every day, you know?
It's almost risky, really. Is like I don't have Katie's job, right? But it's like I would imagine, to me it's risky because like this guy that Ian came up with, it's like I'm not going to look this up because I have a whole list of things literally in front of me that I need to do. I'm not going to. Why am I reading about this guy? Oh, damn it!
I'm excited to see this guy in a future update, by the way.
Yeah, well, you know what? I mean, there are. I mean, I tend to get very zealously excited about certain people, and then it fades a little bit as soon as the next certain person comes up. This one stuck with me now for, I don't know, 3 days. But we'll see. There's so many suggestions. Eventually, everybody will be put out on the table, and we will decide. We will make the decision for who's beyond Meyer Lansky. But for right now, I mean, Meyer Lansky is as good as it gets. I mean, who doesn't want to play as Murder Inc?
That sounds so cool. Just
Yes.
that name. And I was just like, no, I didn't know Murder Inc. was a real thing.
It is, absolutely. I know, and like that Meyer Lansky, he had a way with naming things, and what it's the coolest gang name. I'm sure sometimes some of the things that are in Empire of Sin, we have Players have said, well, all right, but in real life, what was? And it was like, no, actually, that was one of the factual bosses. That was one of the factual. That really did happen. Like kidnapping. Like Capone did kidnap somebody to play for his birthday.
Fats Waller. Yeah.
Yeah, he kidnapped a guy. Like if you wanted a band to play for your birthday, obviously you'd just go kidnap somebody. I mean, this is, the fact of the time is far stranger than the fiction.
I can totally see that, and you know what? I'm excited to see what you guys have coming up like down the road, and I can see that Empire of Sin is going to be around for a very long time, and I'm very happy to see that.
Well, thank you so much, and happy anniversary to Shacknews.
Thank you so much. We're very excited about what we have lined up for this year, and we've already got more stuff down the road, and we got the whole 25th anniversary articles that went up last month. It's just the beginning. So.
Awesome.
And Greg is helping lead that effort